Welcome to the second part of the Multicards generator demonstration. I would like to now quickly reiterate the very basics of using this tool. So it is a GeoNodes modifier. We just need to drag and drop it onto our object, and now we can play with some of the settings. And then the basics of creating the cards is we use Shift E, so edge crease, to spawn those cards where we want them. And then additionally, we have some materials to choose from. And on that note, I would like to show you one trick. If you'd like to adjust the color, for example, for this material to better preview it with your character, all you have to do is to create like a temporary plane object. And now let's drop this very material onto it. And now in the shader editor, we can adjust the color. All right, and now let's start from the very beginning. So the installing of this tool. So with this tool, you get this zip file containing the asset. So we need to unpack it, and there you will find the folder containing the blend file with the asset and the very important cuts file that will help put all of our tools in their proper space in the UI. So now all we need to do is to copy the directory to this folder, and we copy paste it into the preferences file paths, and we hit on the plus button, and that's it. Now we choose this library, and for this tool I recommend using append, so it will be easier to use this tool in the scene multiple times. Alright, and now let's take a look at our modifier. So the first checkbox is export. I already showed you this one in the previous video, and then we have the mesh for normals. So for this, I am not actually picking the high poly mesh that you can see in the scene, but I have a low poly version, so this tool will be faster thanks to it. And this is a mesh that we are picking normals from, so you can see it in action. If it's not there, you can see that those normals for the cards are random, and now this mesh stabilizes it, and it also stabilizes the influence of it on the shape deformations. However, we have additional control, manual control for the normals with the vertex crease. So in the context menu for the vertices, the right click menu, we can find the vertex crease, and anything above 0 will tell those cards to flip the normals. So you can see it in action over here. Alright, and now let's go back to the top of our modifier, to the main settings. And over there, we can adjust the number of the segments in the cards with this slider over here. Then there is the additional option of adding segments along the length of the card with the divisions. And then we can adjust the length. However, let me remove the mask for the length for a moment, and also the G-Pencil guide, so we can better see it. And now you can see that we can adjust with those sliders the length of our cards. We can also randomize this length, and then we have the seed for this random. And next up, at the very bottom of this panel, there is the extrude direction per point. By default, it's off. And when it's off, the direction of the card, the direction of extrusion is averaged for all the edges selected for the card. So you can see it in action over here. This is an average direction, and then when we choose per point, you can see that the card is spread, so to speak. However, I think it is still influenced by some shape settings. So if I go into shape and let's reset the taper setting, yeah, now you can see how this setting works. So this will be it. And next up is the grease pencil guide, which actually gives us a total control over the direction of our cards. So with this on, you can see it affect the shape of our cards. And for this, the important setting is the influence, where we control the distance at which the guides will control the shape of the cards. So you can see it in action over here. And now the shape of the cards will be interpolated between all those grease strokes that we have created. And then we have the masking option. To better illustrate it, let me make those cards actually a bit bigger. Alright, and now what we want to do is mask, for example, those two cards in between. So all we need to do is to choose a vertex group. So I have a vertex group created before. It's called G-Pencil, so I just type it in over here. And now we go into the weight paint mode. And if we set this weight to 1, the grease pencil guides won't affect those cards over here. Alright, so that's how it works. And next up is the material panel, where we can set textures for our cards. So over here with the preview material checkbox, we have this atlas on the right, and there we are picking two collections for the hanging loose threads and for the preserved threads. And with those planes inside of those collections, we are telling the cards the UV coordinates. And if I just leave one plane, you can see now we have the same texture for all the cards. If I undo it, we have those three different types. And actually, to better illustrate it, let me split the view in two. And while we edit, if you have a non-square texture for your alphas, don't worry about it. You just will need to preview it as a square over here, since the UVs still are 0 to 1 coordinates. And on top of that, if you have alphas that were rotated, we can also adjust it with the Shift plus E. So with the edge crease, we can rotate our UVs. And now let me show you how you can also change the type of the texture for the card. So we just grab one of the planes and we place it over another alpha. And by the way, those names above those alphas correspond to the texture switcher in the substance material that you also get with this tool. Alright, and now you can see that this is fairly easy. And then we have three types of materials for the threads. So if we go over here from the drop down, we can find the tear cards squiggly also. So we have this type of texture, and then we have the straight type for the textures. Alright, and that will be it for the material panel. And next up is the shape panel. Over there we have some of the settings which we already covered in the previous video. However, let's take a closer look at one special feature. So if we add more segments and we use bend, then below it we have the shape extra settings, where we can change the influence of this deformation from root to tip. And then for the L-bend and for the twist, we have some extra settings where we can order the deformation. Now it is ordered by normal. So we have this look, and if we choose random, we have this more chaotic look. And this sums up presentation of the shape settings. I think all of those settings are pretty much self-explanatory. And now moving on, another important feature of the tear cards generator, that is split to multicards. So we have those cards over here that we created with this very setting. So let me uncheck the grease guide control for now, so we can better see what's happening. And now we can adjust the density of those cards over here. We have some additional control of this density with the vertex group also for the masking. Then there is the spread setting. Then there is the offset root. And the main setting actually is split above edges. So we can see it in action. It is now set to 3. So if I select 3 edges, I get one big card. However, if I go above it, now we are using this function. And on top of that, then we can control the size of those cards in terms of the edges. So it can be a maximum of, for example, 4 edges, minimum of 4. So we get those big cards. However, let's now go back to the defaults. And then at the end, we can change the random seed over there. So this will be it for the split to multicards. And next up we have the duplicates. So to better see it, I will now create a couple of cards on the side. Let me create singular cards. So we create those 3. And now you can see that if I change the amount of duplicates, you can see just those cards multiplied. And on top of that, there is an extra feature for this. So at the very bottom, we can also change the way we choose textures for those cards. So right now we are choosing the randomize feature, but we can uncheck it, and you can see that all those duplicates share the same texture. And now moving on to another key feature of the Ter cards generator, that is the preserved threads. So over there we can change number of segments in the cards for the preserved threads. And then there is the special feature that is segments by length. Let me remove those cards for a moment so we have a more clear view. And now with this on, you can see that the mesh is optimized. And if I were to spawn another preserved thread, so with Ctrl E and the pair of edges selected, we spawn the preserved thread. However, we can see that the direction is flipped, and we can fix it with the switch direction for the preserved. And now with the segments by length on, you can see how the mesh density is more unified. And then we have some more controls. So similarly to regular cards, with edge bevel weight, we can switch the textures that we have signed to our cards. And then also similarly to the regular cards, we can flip the normals in those preserved threads with the vertex crease. So right now you can see that probably some vertices overlap the other pair of the edges. So if we choose just this one vertice, it flips only this group of the preserved thread. And then we can play with the chaos setting if you are going for a more irregular look. And then there is the gravity. And without gravity by normal, the gravity will be pointing downwards, straight downwards. However, with this gravity by normal, the preserved threads will slide along the surface. So this is how it works. And then we have the push setting. So the mesh won't intersect with the body underneath, for example. And then we can change the settings for the width of those cards. And this width, once again, is counted by the number of edges that build those cards. So you can play with this setting. And then finally, we have the length tolerance. So the tool will compare the length of two connected edges by the preserved thread. And if the difference will be higher than this value, the card will be deleted. So the value of 4 is pretty safe. However, if you'd be unsatisfied with the stretching in the texture, you might want to make this value a little bit smaller. And now it's time for the final part of this video. Let's look at the masking. So let me rearrange those cards a little bit. So I will uncheck the grease guide. And now let's add some shape deformation using bend. And now if we go to the masking settings, let's create a new vertex group. I will call it bend. And then back in the modifier, let's apply this vertex group to this mask over here. And now if we go into the white paint mode, you will see that with the value of 1, we are actually not masking, but we are inverting the influence of this bend. However, if we'd like to mask this deformation, all we have to do is set the weight to 0.5. And thanks to this, you can see how we get the full control of this deformation. And this masking will work similarly for the other deformations. However, for those first two, so sub and add length, it will work straightforward. So once again, let's create another vertex group. Let's call it add length. And now if I set it over there in our modifier, now if I go into the weight paint mode with this group selected, you will see that any value above 0 will add some length to those cards. And then if we go for the weight of 1, we can make them even longer. And now let's finally take a look at the masking for preserved threads. So there is one small difference. So if we create a vertex group, let's call it press gravity. And if we set it up in our modifier, now once again, if we go into the weight paint mode, with this group selected, you will see that the value of 1 will once again invert the direction of gravity. The value of 0.5 will set the gravity to 0. However, since preserved thread is composed from the pair of edges on each side of the tear, there is a main side for each preserved thread. So for the masking, we have to find which one it is. And like you can see over here, if I paint on the left side, nothing is happening. However, painting the mask on the right side will mask the deformation. And this sums up the in-depth look into the features of Multicards generator. In the next video, we'll take a look at the substance material and exporting final mesh.